Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Gelvin Valley for Farming Simulator 15, a beautiful map created by Wild Wild Wes. We are in the middle of our harvest of the canola crop, and I paused here just a moment to look at our map and see kind of where we're at. We're in the middle of harvesting field 47. We have fields 8 and 2 and 1 and the massive one across the way, field number 18. And then we have the two smaller fields over here. Actually, this is a new planting. So we're grinding away on this. We're getting close to being done, but still have plenty to do, and for sure aren't going to get it done in this episode. So without further ado, let me get to the harvest. And we'll get this puppy going. Let me just hit higher and send it off. There we go. I'm going to head to our trusty and rented truck here, man truck. We got just a little bit more to do. I almost wonder if I should be driving the combine so I don't incur any more. It's been a little while since I've been in here. Maybe that's what I need to do to help speed this up and just try to get this done as soon as I can and be done with it. Anyway, hope everybody's been well. I've had a last month and a half at work has been some really, really long hours, and I got to kind of remember where I'm at in here. I've been away quite a while, and honestly, I've missed it. These are the things we do in our spare time, and when you get old, like some of us are, the spare time seems to tighten and diminish. But I have been able to fit in a couple special things here of late that I'd like to share at some point. And one of those happened just, I guess it wasn't this last week. It was within a week. Today is Tuesday when I record this. And a week ago Tuesday, our family took a special trip. Well, I say our family. It was mainly my wife and I and oldest daughter. Then I took her parents, and then there was a friend of my wife's, an elderly lady that went on this trip with us. I was hoping to take my boys, but school started, and so they really, one of them was in college, the other, well, he could have taken the day, but he chose to work. Silly guy. Anyway, I think I've mentioned from time to time, it's been a few episodes back, I shared a little about a local short line of a railroad track, if you will, that was north of our house, a mile and a half-ish, and, oops, come on, get up the hill. And so I've shared a little about that. I know I had an episode where I talked through a rail line that almost was kind of out in the hills near Lone Oak Farms, which I know I've mentioned before. And this was like latter 1800s. You know, there was a group of investors who were going to put in a line. They maybe ran out of money. Who knows what the reason was. They never completed the line. They did some grading. Nobody really knows how much track they put in. So it's kind of a local, almost a legend, mystery, if you will. But it's something we know about, something that is history to the community or what have you. So I do have a fondness for trains. And I think I've mentioned before, I talked through some railroad games, computer games, just like this one here is related to farming. I spent a fair amount of time in my growing up years, just enjoying trains and train type games. And at some point growing up, before we really could appreciate it, my father put together, it was on a sheet of plywood in our basement. He put it on the ping pong table that we had as a family, and he built an HO scale model railroad, and this was nothing fancy at all. It was a single oval, as I recall, and off of the oval, I think he had a switch track, just a single switch, and you could run your train by, oh goodness, I don't even remember. It was by something. Anyways, point is, it was very simple. We were too young to appreciate it. My brothers and I took turns running the train and seeing how fast we could go without the train collapsing off of the rails. And you know, this in our basement, it was a concrete floor. This was sitting up on a ping pong table, so it was a long ways down for those intricate parts. And as you might imagine, it didn't last very long at all. So yeah, I have some history with trains. I've always wanted to take a train trip sometime, you know, across the U.S. where I live, and it just hasn't happened before. I remember as a kid, I took a trip. I think, you know, I live in Salem, Oregon, and I took a trip up to Portland. It was a day trip, and I don't even remember why we did it. You know, it was something my mom took us on, and so we went up to Portland for the day. I don't know if she had some shopping to do or just what the deal was. But most of us, I would venture to guess, live within range, you know, unless we're way out in the boondocks, you know, in a place where trains just aren't. You know, if we're near any urban center of some kind, we're gonna be in a place where we hear with some regularity a train whistle. It's still fairly efficient to move, you know, freight and that kind of thing by rail. Ooh, let's see here. Can I? Whoa. All right, let me hop into the tractor over here and see if I can hook this up. All right. Unlock and lock. Okay. We shall see if that works. I'm going to back this over here. I have almost a full load. For all I know, I have enough to fill the truck, but I really don't know, so I'll just leave it here. I'll turn it off. Let me head back over to my tractor, and we'll get it turned around. Please hold on to the header. Is it doing it? I think it is. All right. Well, we'll head on down the road and take this to where... Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry for the whiplash. We'll turn on our beacons to be proper. I think I need to head up the hill again. I'll go down the hill here and then hang a right and get into... Shoot, what field is this going to be? Field number 2. I think I can head in the top of field number 2, and it has a larger gate. So, you know, I don't need a large gate. I could take it in over here to the right, left, rather. But, you know, that's probably a decent place as any to head in there for this. Let me see what the, yes, here's where I was thinking of. So, maybe let me get turned around. This will work as well as anything, I suppose. All I gotta do is get it like so. Oop, back up. There we go. Alright, now we'll head back over to Combine. Get it on down there. You know, I have to say I've enjoyed horsing around with this trailer, but there's the cost of this beautiful machine and the cost of this horsing around is more than I think I'm willing to pay. You know, I'm in the red, and yeah, this is just going to be this is probably more than I can afford on a regular basis. So I sure hope that once I go to sell all this canola, I will get a tidy profit. And I still have some grain in storage, barley, I believe, or wheat. I can't remember, it's been so long, that I'm waiting still for the market to recover. You know, it just decimates it when you sell a lot of it, and takes a while to get back to where it was. Anyway, I was mentioning trains, and so this past week, our family took a train trip, and it's not, you know, I mentioned just a little bit ago, I mentioned life-size trains, and I mentioned little itty-bitty ones, although, as it turns out, you know, those that are interested in model railroading as a hobby would know that this HO scale isn't the smallest of railroad scales. Now, what was the, okay, oh, unlock low, badink. Okay. Alright, let's slink downhill just a wee bit. There we go. And back to our combine. And we're about ready to need the truck anyhow. But in the, there are all sorts of model railroad scales, and HO I think is a fairly standard one. I can't tell how wide the tracks are, but I know there's a smaller scale, there's an N scale, there is a Z scale, and I almost think I heard the other day there was a smaller one yet. Well, scales also go up, and you know, so beyond the HO scale, you could have, I think the next one up is maybe TT, there's an O scale, there's a G scale, which is kind of what you would, there we finished. Oh, come on, back up. Yeah, right about here. I can't talk and combine at the same blooming time. Probably gonna get this filled. Actually, can I go out the road here? I sure can. I sure can. Let me cut this off at the pass. I just hear my son coming home on in his diesel truck. I don't know if that came through the video. I'm gonna slink over this way, quicker than going around. Anyway, like I was saying, the scales also go up. The G scale is what sometimes is commonly called a garden scale, and I think that's the scale where you start to see railroads, model railroads taken outdoors. And maybe there's another scale beyond G, but there was one in particular that our family encountered as we went on this special trip. And I don't know what scale it is. All I know is it is 1/8 of normal scale. So the rails, I believe, are 7 1/4, 7.5 inches wide, something like that. So if you take any of the equipment and maybe even the width of the rails, I really don't know. I don't think that quite matches up to standard grade. But basically, the idea is, you know, if it's a 1/8 scale, you take any of the parts and multiply it by 8, whatever their size is, and you have the real life size version. So 7.5 inches, you know, if you multiply that by 8, I believe you get 60 inches, which I think is wider than the standard rail gauge, at least here in the U.S., which, I'm going to illustrate my ignorance. I think it's 4 feet, 8.5 inches or something like that. 4 feet 48, that'd be 54.5 inches, which is different from 60. So yeah, so there must be some scale is probably a relative thing, and there's probably purists who who are the ones who would dictate whether something's in scale. Shoot, I mean, you got the same issue here in Farming Simulator. You look at this combine, you compare it to the size of the houses, the size of the trees, and I know there are people who say Farming Sim is out of scale, the way the Giants set it up. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The point is we got scale treatment everywhere. But anyhow, apparently, and I only learned this about a year ago, in other words, last summer, that our state, or the state that I live in, the state of Oregon, apparently has the largest miniature train park in the world of the 1/8 scale railroad. That is with tracks 7.5 inches wide. Now, near where I live are a couple parks, train parks, miniature train parks, if you will. One of them is in Brooks, Oregon. I think it's called, oh shoot, the name's on the tip of my tongue. I'll remember it later, I'm sure. Willow Creek, that's what it is. Willow Creek Railroad. There's another one, a Moala, and they're both similar to distance away from where I live, but the track itself, or the size of the miniature train park, sits on maybe an acre to 3 or 4 acres. So, you know, it's a sizable playground, if you will, for those that have trains and enjoy this particular scale, but it isn't huge. And when I say 1/8 scale, by the way, the 7.5 inch wide, the engines and cars, there's a lot of times they're designed for people to ride on them. And the seat, I mean, could often be wider than the rails. I mean, obviously all of our posteriors are wider than 7.5 inches, I presume. So a lot of times, yeah, you got you're riding this little tiny rail car and being pulled by some little miniature engine, if you will. Again, 1/8 scale, and they do an effective job. These rails are set up, you know, similar to what they would be in real life. They're generally done, you know, with thought given to the grade. You know, in real life railroads, there's only a certain amount of grade that they can handle. Yikes, I'm going to fall off in the pitch here. And so, just like in real life, a lot of these little trains, they're not able to pull a lot of weight up a really steep grade. So you'll see grades of, you know, 0 to 2.5%. And to get above that is really asking a lot, you know, of a little train. It gets pretty steep. So my interest in this was riding on these trains. You know, it's just, I don't know, it's probably the little boy in me that comes out. And so to hear last summer and to learn that my state happens to have the largest of such places in the whole world, you know, just blew my mind. I had no idea. You know, reading up on the history of it, and when it's called Train Mountain, by the way, you know, you can probably look it up on YouTube and find videos of people who have gone there and explored the rail. It's apparently been in our state for, I think something I read said it was almost 40 years old. And I've lived here my whole life and only this past year ever heard of it. Now, I've not been looking around for it, and maybe if I was really interested in it as a hobby, I would have long ago have heard of it. But even the people, when we went down there, they acknowledged that it was kind of almost like a secret. It wasn't very, they said they hadn't done a very good job of advertising that they even existed. So last summer, Each year, I think I've mentioned this in episodes before, I try to take my family on a little fishing trip. We have a lot of nice mountain lakes here, and so we usually it's over in Central Oregon. There's a number of lakes over there we like visiting. So the end of September is kind of when we shoot for going on these trips, and my wife thought, since I just heard about this and my birthday was in the summer, she said, why don't we go there, for your birthday? So we went down there, and I can't even remember. Maybe I mentioned this on a previous video. We went down there. They gave us a ride, and this place is huge. They gave us a ride kind of around their main facility. They didn't charge us a dime, and I enjoyed it. The ride was maybe 20, 30 minutes in duration. I don't remember exactly. And then there was lots of exhibits to see around there of vintage, life-size rail equipment and so forth. And I have a feeling I maybe had an episode on it at some point. I just don't rightly remember. Whoop. Go to my truck. I don't know if this will be enough to fill her up and take off, but we'll see. So that particular trip, we just got a short little run. Really enjoyed it, but basically, when you get down there and you learn, hey, this place sits on 2,200 acres, 2,200 acres. There are farms that aren't as large as this, this terrain park, this miniature terrain park. And they have, I think, I'm not sure how many miles of rail. I saw various measures. It's over 30. I think I've seen 37. I've seen 35. Who knows? Maybe it was all correct at some point, and they simply just keep adding on to it. And believe me, when you look at their website and you dig in and visit a lot of the links, there are plans to make more and more rail there as they have time and resources. Let me see here. I'll maybe park that. Oh yeah, we can do a little bit more. So, and when you look at a map, it isn't that they're just going to put more and more rail and crisscross over what they have. Suffice it to say, 2,200 acres is a really big area. So there is plenty of ground, that is open and could be put to use. So, but after that initial trip, we tried to research a little bit what it would take to go on a longer trip. It's kind of a quasi not-for-profit organization and also a type of club. I actually think there are more than one organization involved. You can donate to the museum, and it's a tax deduction here in the U.S. And then there's also kind of a club you can belong to, and they're all somehow interconnected. So I'm not a member. If you become a member of this organization, if you have your own terrain equipment, you can show up at any time pretty much and use the wonderful track that they have. And let me tell you, after this trip here, going down there and seeing it, I just looked around and all I saw was cost, and more cost, and maintenance, and time, and effort. They must have a veritable army of volunteers, to help take care of the place, because, we went down there, took a long trip, and, so the lady that took us on this trip was explaining a lot of things, how even so much as a large pine cone can potentially derail one of these trains. So a good part of the rail line is sitting underneath pine trees. I mean, it's kind of out in a national forest type, only it isn't national forest. They actually own the land and all that. But it's like being in the forest. So I mean, there's just tons of maintenance. I don't know how they do it or when they do it, how often they got to come through there. But we just saw pine needles everywhere, pine cones everywhere. I give credit to the lady who took us on the tour. We didn't derail a single time. But then again, I didn't see any pine cones on the tracks either. And these, I'm not talking dinky pine cones. These are big ones, that are bigger than maybe your fist. So they're the large variety, if you will. But yeah, our family went down there. We did an overnight, so we stayed kind of in the middle of the state over there. It's about a 4-hour-ish drive from our home, almost to the southern end of the state. So we opted to take a 3-hour drive and cut it off in the middle. And then, of course, we had the train trip the following day, and then came home fairly late in the evening. Just getting home with a 4-hour drive after that. So we got there, I would say, about 9:30 in the morning, and they showed us a quick safety video, which kind of explained the grounds and some of the rules, and you can about imagine what they are. I mean, these are little trains, but you don't hang your hands out too far or hang over on the rail. You could tip the silly thing, and so a lot of it is just basic common sense. Now, I wouldn't know how to, they operate this just like the real railroads. So there's track going everywhere. There are switches, and, they have rules for how closely you can tail another train, how many trains can be in a block of track at a time. And so I don't know that they had it for the particular day we were there, but especially when they have meets where a lot of people are coming and bringing trains, literally hundreds of them. They have a central dispatch that's helping everybody keep track of who's on first, if you will, just for this purpose of safety and making sure there's no collisions. The guide that took us around said, just like with a real train, a lot of times it isn't so much difficulty starting, it's stopping. And, so just, they got grades to deal with when you're carrying humans, several of them. You have, it doesn't take much, when you're hauling humans to add up. Pretty soon you're over 1,000 pounds. Plus you have all the weight of the cars and everything that they're towing. And so we, sat through the safety video. They had us sign some waivers, I guess, in case something bad happened. They wanted to say, well, it's not our fault, it's yours. But whatever. We signed them happily. And the long route that we went on, because we weren't members of this place, was really they called them an excursion train, but kind of like I was mentioning earlier, looking around and all you see is cost and time and effort. Well, somehow they need to make their money from somewhere, so they'll give you a free ride, just around the regular main facility, if you will. But if you want a longer one, they kind of treat it as a type of fundraising for the organization. So they charged us $100 per person to take us down there, and part of the deal is they would take you to the far end of their established rail network, which was several miles away, by the way, as a crow flies. Several miles away from their main base, and then they get you out there. They had a building, kind of a picnic shelter, if you will, so you could get out of the sun. And then they had a picnic lunch for you that you could have out there. So I thought it was pretty cool. They showed you safety, they hauled you out there, they hauled you back, and as long as you wanted to roam around on their rail network, they would take you wherever to show you as much of the rail as possible. And, I know, so for us, the day, we had a breakdown kind of in the middle of it all, which I think I'll explain on another video, so we get into more nitty-gritty on it. but we didn't leave there until after 5. So, I mean, you run the math on that, and we still didn't see but a fraction of the rails. You know, I estimate when we got out of there, we probably saw a third of the rail of the 37 miles, if you will. So, and some of it, you know, some of the 37 miles, it's duplicated. So, you know, around the main office, main station, if you will, sometimes you would have several tracks running in parallel, and sometimes you'd have sidings. So that hardly counts. You know, if you got several rails running parallel to each other, I know that all counts up to the total of 37 miles or what have you. But it's not like you need to see literally every single stretch of that, you know, when you have already been through the area. But 2,200 acres it sits on. They have a main station area where the members can meet. You know, they kind of have a, I wouldn't say it's a banquet hall. I think they call it the Hall of Flags, where maybe their member meetings take place. Probably could have meals and stuff in there where a larger group of people can meet. I think I saw like a couple hundred people. And then they have several, there goes a bill, several outbuildings, you know, like a wood shop. Oops. And, you know, because there's a lot of, there's so many things to describe on this, and I'm already out of time. But a wood shop, there's a metal shop, you know, including, as I understand it, lathes, metal lathes and everything. Some of the people that work on this have a lot of skills working with their hands, you know, whether it's with wood, metal, mechanics. I mean, there's wiring things to do, and various barns and things here and there to store stuff that they need for this railroad. So I don't know, they being the largest in the world of what they are, they realize they've kind of become a mecca for people to come to, kind of a place where people make a pilgrimage to, maybe at least once in their life, just to go see kind of what it's like. And here I am, you know, I'm in the same basic geographic area, just within a 4-hour drive, and I only recently discovered it. So my wife was telling me, she says, I think I have found what you're going to do when you retire. Maybe she's right. If I ever get to retire. But I couldn't tell you which I enjoy more. I mean, you probably talk to most men, and there is an inherent fondness for trains, mechanical things. It's inborn to us. You know, what can I say? So probably in most men, there's going to be some kind of fascination with trains, with agriculture, machinery, and I know our interests are all going to be across the board different. But I'm guessing there's a fair amount of people listening that would be interested in going to a place like Train Mountain. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go check it out yourself. And maybe you too, if you live in the area or live somewhere else, may one day have a Mecca type journey to it. Anyway, I'm out of time. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a little while since I've recorded one of these, so I'm enjoying coming back to my little farm here in Gelvin Valley. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.